Have you ever been told no by someone who was just doing their job and then pushed them to say yes? Have you ever advocated on behalf of someone else? I've been an adult for more than half of my life now, and I'm still not a fan. Adulting demands a lot of skills we may or may not have grown up with: light carpentry and plumbing, cooking, food safety, and my least favorite, bargaining with people who are paid to tell me no. My Midwestern niceness, the Minnesota nice I definitely inherited from my parents, means that in certain circumstances, I am particularly not good at pushing once I've been told no. And even if I ultimately decide to keep advocating after being told no, I second guess myself the whole way deep inside. And I'm particularly not good at advocating if it's only for myself. But the Syrophoenician woman in Mark 7 is not advocating for herself. She's advocating for her daughter. Perhaps that's where her motivation comes from. If she were the one suffering, maybe she could just bear it. But she can't just bear it because the one suffering is her daughter. However, this mother doesn't encounter a well-rested, well-balanced Jesus. She encounters Jesus after he has already voiced a whole chapter ago that he would like to go away with the disciples and rest for a while. But he hasn't gotten any rest. He's been feeding 5,000 people and healing people and casting out demons this whole time. And now he has traveled very far away to a Gentile region where people shouldn't know who he is, to a place where his reputation shouldn't precede him, and gone straight into a house and closed the door. And perhaps he has taken one breath, one sigh of relief, and then he has heard the knock at the door and the plea for help from yet another desperate person in need of his care. And this exhausted and burned out Jesus, fully in possession of the knowledge that his mission in life is to minister to the people of Israel and not to Gentiles, sets a firm boundary with incredibly impolite language. In a moment that declares his full humanity, Jesus snaps and calls the woman and her daughter dogs. There is no way to sugarcoat his words. He's exhausted and he has done, and he shows it. He thinks that because this woman is a Gentile, he can draw a line in the sand and say, I am not here for you. By calling this woman and her daughter dogs, he is drawing a line between the people of the God of Abraham and the Greeks, who are outside of the covenant. Now, it's important for us to know that Mark probably didn't think there was much wrong with what Jesus said here, or he wouldn't have included it in his gospel. Remember, Mark might have agreed with Jesus, or Mark might not have cared one way or another whether Jesus was perfect, since the obsession with the idea that Jesus should have been perfect didn't come until hundreds of years later. A side note, in fact, the idea that Jesus was not fully human was debunked as a heresy in the 4th century at the Council of Constantinople. For those of you who are keeping track, that was called, or is called, Apollinarianism. In any case, this is one of the moments we get when Jesus' humanity is on full display. Jesus has not taken his own advice yet, and he won't rest until he dies. He is not magnanimous and above exhaustion. He is not so divinely endowed with energy that it cannot run out. He does not possess a limitless well of compassion. One big takeaway from this story is that even really lovely people have their limits. Even really lovely people with the best intentions screw up sometimes. Even people whose deep vocational identity is to serve others need a break sometimes, or else they too will break. But when someone says no because they are at their breaking point, or because their reasoning lacks grace and mercy, this mother's willingness to take no for an answer shows us what is possible when someone persists. Because she doesn't believe the lie that the crumbs aren't enough. Theologian Matt Skinner points out that this mother, motivated by desperation for her child, is willing to trust that God's grace is so abundant that even the crumbs will be enough to provide her with what she needs. She insists that she is not even looking for a place at the table, even if we would say she should have one. She is fiercely trusting that God's scraps are powerful enough to save her daughter. Yet again, our country is facing an unthinkable but altogether predictable and preventable tragedy. And we have been so well trained to look at these big, complicated problems and accept without question all the reasons why we can't possibly do anything about them. In this case, the focus on mental health and individual actions rather than access to weapons of war, the focus on an individual's right to bear arms that is seemingly held as more important than an individual's right to live without fear, the collective throwing up of our hands and saying, I guess there's just nothing we can do. We are being told no by people with a vested interest in keeping things the way they are, or by people who are just so tired and beaten down that they don't believe it's possible for there to be another way. But this mother in today's story shows us that we don't have to accept no for an answer, even when it comes from an exhausted Jesus. And if we don't have to accept no from Jesus, we most certainly don't have to accept no from the people we have elected to make our lives better. The mother in today's gospel knows that God's grace is abundant enough for all of us, for all of our needs, and her story echoes the story of Jacob wrestling the angel in Genesis. She is not letting go until she gets her blessing. Throughout Mark, Jesus heals those who ask and those who don't, those who are inside the covenant and those who stand outside. And in each of these stories, we see the ways in which Jesus heals us and our communities and brings us closer to each other and to God. Jesus continues to be present around and among us, continues to heal us even as we grieve and work for a better world. And we are the ones who get to be that healing presence in our communities as the hands and feet of Christ, who has first healed us. Amen.